happy to be able to bring God's Word to you today using the tools that He's given us, even though we can't be face-to-face in our usual Bible class format. So we're going to be using the camera and the internet so you can join with us in the study of God's Word. But as usual, let's begin by praying. Lord, we thank you for everything that you have done and have given to us. Sometimes we take those things for granted, Lord, until you show us that they are only fleeting and here for a while. Be with us now as we study the Proverbs that show us again that the only wealth that really counts is what we have in Christ Jesus, your Son, our Savior. We ask it in His name. Amen. And I have this morning a class of one, and that's Pastor Hein. He's going to be reacting to what I'm trying to teach. And we're sitting so far apart because we're trying to keep the required distance, just in case he's nuclear or that's something right. Or other.
Social distancing.
Social distance. All right, we're on page 47. You know, we've been looking at Proverbs written mainly by King Solomon, and it's written basically for Christians. It's kind of what I like to call the Sermon on the Mount for Old Testament Christians. And we've looked at the first part of it, which was 10 appeals by a father to his son. And now the second half that we're looking at is pulling together selected verses on selected topics. Kind of like a pearl necklace where you've got little pearls all independent and yet strung side by side. And we've been looking first of all at marriage and the family because that's the building block of society. And then we looked at children and discipline. And now we've been looking at wealth and work. And today we're going to particularly look at the proper value that we should put on wealth and some of the dangers that are associated at times, even with believers, when it comes to wealth. Let's start at the top of page 47. Would you, Pastor Hein, read us Proverbs 13, verse 7?
Very good. And you can also download this form at home. One man pretends to be rich, yet has nothing. Another pretends to be poor, yet has great wealth.
You know, in my years in the ministry, I learned that you can't tell by appearances what a person's financial position is. I had an old couple from Germany, I better not mention their name, and they lived as poorly as you could think, and yet when both of them died, in their will was $250,000 for our church, which was the start of the fund for doing what we did here at Good Shepherd for entryway, elevator, and so on. So you can't tell by looking at people whether they have money or not. But the point is that we want people who have either money or not to be wise when it comes to the riches of God. Now let's go down to the next one, Proverbs 11:4, the second one down.
Wealth is worthless in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death.
Day of wrath, what do you think he's talking about?
I think it could be Judgment Day.
Yes, death and Judgment Day. And what's your money and earthly goods good for?
Nothing at that time.
Nothing at all. And what's the deliverance from death?
The righteousness that we have in Christ.
The righteousness that we have in Christ. You know, that's one of those terms that we use so frequently, righteousness, that sometimes I think we should stop and define it. What do you think that means, righteousness?
Sometimes we think of the righteousness God has, that He's perfect and holy and totally set apart from sin.
And that's what He imparts to us through His Son, Jesus Christ. Work on the cross and also work with keeping the law perfectly. I like the next one too, the little picture there, Proverbs 11:28.
Whoever trusts in riches will fall, but the righteous will thrive like a green leaf.
I've got a nice Norway maple tree on my front lawn. And some days I almost cuss at that thing because you know what happens with those great big leaves? They don't fall until after the snow has started. And here's the picture. He says, those who are trusting in their riches, you know, they're going to end up like that tree, dropping their leaves. But the righteous will always be blooming in the eyes of the Lord. Proverbs 18 has a warning.
The wealth of the rich is their fortified city. They imagine it an unscalable wall.
Yeah, they think our wealth is what's going to be our protection. It's in the olden days like the wall that surrounded the city, and if you had a strong enough wall, the enemy couldn't climb up over it. And so many people view their riches that way. And then what happens when a virus climbs over that wall? Yeah.
We're learning that none of that stuff really can be depended upon.
That's right. Yeah, none of it can be dependable and none of it is stable. Oh, Proverbs 23:4.
Do not wear yourself out to get rich. Have the wisdom to show restraint. Cast but a glance at riches, and they are gone, for they will surely sprout wings and fly off to the sky like an eagle.
Ever watch an eagle fly?
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. In the Kenai Peninsula in Alaska, when I had to go up there to present to the pastors, why the eagles had their nests, you know, those big nests, and when they got excited and flew off, that was really something to watch. And he says here, those who depend upon their earthly goods, their riches, their stock market, which of course we're looking at today, and you know what's happening. They're like the eagles. That stuff that flies away just like that, and it's gone. And the next one is good too, where he talks about having the right priorities in life. Proverbs 15.
Better a little with the fear of the Lord than great wealth with turmoil. Better a meal of vegetables where there is love than a fattened calf with hatred.
Yeah. So better to have just vegetables and have love around your family table. I don't know if I like that verse. I haven't tried, is it Burger King's Veggie Burger?
No, the Impossible Whopper, is it called?
Impossible Whopper. No, he says, you know what's best for you and me? Not to worry about riches and not to make that the goal in life, but to have that Lord who gives the riches. And he gives it in different measures to us as he knows how we will handle and use the riches that he gives us. All right, let's go on to the next page. And let's look at Proverbs 17, the second one down.
Better a dry crust with peace and quiet than a house full of feasting with strife.
Better a dry crust. Who would choose the riches of this world if all that it did was bring turmoil into your house? A lot of people. I had a man who was, I think, the largest landowner in Jefferson County. And turmoil between him and his wife, turmoil between the kids. Yeah. And I don't know if they ever sat down to the table to eat the bread in peace and quiet because of that love and zeal for running after riches. People are more important than what's on the menu, right? And look at Proverbs 22, verse 2.
Rich and poor have this in common. The Lord is the maker of them all.
You know, the rich aren't any different from you or me. They're human beings. What's going to happen to them? They're going to finally die. They have to depend on God for life. And whether they know it or not, they should be depending on God also when it comes to the things of this world. But they don't. They depend on themselves, and when something happens, then you know what they do. They give up in turmoil and jump off the skyscrapers, like back in, was it 1929 with the big Depression, right?
Yeah. And this coronavirus is hitting rich and poor, everyone. There's no one immune from it.
That's right. Now the next one is one that I used a lot with my confirmation classes.
2 things I ask of you, O Lord, do not refuse before I die. Keep falsehood and lies far from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches, but give me only my daily bread. Otherwise I may have too much and disown you and say, who is the Lord? Or I may become poor and steal, and so dishonor the name of my God.
I would always tell the 8th grade confirmands that I had 2 prayers for them. The one prayer was that he never made them billionaires. Maybe today I should say trillionaires. And the other prayer was that he would never make them in poverty. And why did I pray that way? Why did I pray that he would not make those kids into billionaires? What's the temptation?
If you get too much, you become proud and you forget about God.
Yep.
Don't need him.
And if you don't have enough?
You might complain and despair of God, right?
Yeah. And it takes the eyes off of the Lord. All right, let's go on to the next lesson, where we're going to look at what Solomon describes as the 7 deadly sins. Now, you know, one of the ways in which they're diagnosing this virus, this coronavirus, is with temperature. Now, is there a temperature in God's eyes when it comes to sin? Does he have a sinometer where he says, oh, this sin is 90 degrees, this one is 102 degrees, this one is more dangerous and blameful than others? No. Sin is sin is sin. So when Solomon talks about 7 deadly sins, what he's trying to do is to emphasize these sins particularly, and I think because they're so common. And he starts off with the one that I think you and I would have started off with too, the sin of covetousness. Give me a definition for coveting.
Wanting something that's out of your reach, a sinful desire for something that isn't yours to have.
Yeah, that's wanting something God hasn't given you, right? What's behind that? If you look high enough.
Yeah. It's dishonoring God. You're not happy with what he's given you, and you're not following his will. He says, I think of Eve, don't eat of that tree. That's off limits to you. Be satisfied with everything I've given you. But basically she said, no, I want something that you said isn't mine to have.
Yeah. So when you come right down to it, the sin of covetousness, or we could use a shorter word, the sin of greed, really is a slap in God's face. Mm-hmm. You're saying to God, I'm dissatisfied with what you gave me, and I'm going to try and get more than what you gave me, whether you like it or not, God. So that sin of coveting really is that sin of greed, which really leads to another sin, which begins with that letter P, pride. Man thinks that he deserves, man thinks that he has it coming, and he's not satisfied. Proverbs 27.
Death and destruction are never satisfied, and neither are the eyes of man.
Death and destruction. When you drive by the memorial park where my wife is buried, there's room for a lot more graves, right? That's what he's talking about. He says they're never satisfied. They're always on the march. They're always encroaching on more territory. And you're never going to have enough acreage when it comes to death and destruction. In the eyes of men, what he's talking about is the eyes that by which we look at things really are hooked up intimately to something else. To what?
The heart.
To the heart, yes. And you can tell what's in the heart by what people are looking at or striving for or coveting or greedy for. Proverbs 30.
The leech has 2 daughters. Give, give, they cry.
The leech. What's a leech?
The leech always wants something more from somebody else.
Yep.
Always want to take more.
Yep. He's a bloodsucker.
Yeah.
Yep. And he's got 2 daughters. He can't give birth to anything but greed.
Yeah.
Greed. That's all that they know about. Never satisfied. What are the results of covetousness? Proverbs 28.
A faithful man will be richly blessed, but one eager to get rich will not go unpunished.
Faithful man, what do you think he means?
Faithful, I think, in staying close to the Lord, faithfully following His will, faithfully doing your work that God has given you.
Yeah. And you know what? Christians sometimes too make the mistake of thinking that blessings have a dollar sign on them. No, they don't. There are other blessings besides what's in our wallet or what's in our investments. There's the blessings of having a loving partner, for example. There's a blessing of having godly children. There's a blessing of having a life that's satisfying. There's a blessing of having a church to go and worship the Lord. And when that blessing is taken away from us, like we've been experiencing these past weeks, we all at once stop and realize, you know what? That wasn't a chore, that was a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's taken away from me. And the one that doesn't look at those blessings, who wants to get rich quick, he will not be unpunished. You know what he's talking about. He's got the wrong God. He can't divide himself between the things of God and the things of this world. My wife's brother gave us a little toy fox terrier, little Pixie, we called her. She even had papers. And the only one who could handle that dog was my wife. In fact, she bit one of my members. One of those, well, never mind, I won't categorize it. And she got out of our front porch. We had a big front porch, with those galaxy windows and so on. And then inside would be the regular door to the house. And Pixie got out, and I'm coming across the street, and my wife's at the door, that outer door, and Pixie's running up the street, and both of us are hollering at Pixie. And finally that dog stopped in her tracks. Why? She didn't know whose voice to follow. She didn't know whose voice to follow.
Sure.
What am I trying to say?
Well, we hear a lot of voices out there telling us to go in different directions, but we want to listen to the Lord's voice.
That's right. And what he's saying here is, if you listen to the Lord's voice and look at the treasures that he gives, you will be richly blessed. Let's go down to the last Proverbs 28:25.
A greedy man stirs up dissension, but he who trusts in the Lord will prosper.
Greedy man stirs up dissension. You think they're happy? People who live for the things of this world, you think they're happy? You think they're satisfied?
There's a lot of rich people, a lot of rich athletes who just never seem to be happy. They never seem to have enough.
Yeah, they're dissatisfied with themselves, and it shows in their actions with everybody else. John D. Rockefeller was once asked, how much money would it take to make you satisfied? You know what he
Always a
answered?
little bit more.
Just a little bit more. And we've got to be careful. It isn't just the billionaire who's got that temptation. We have to be careful. We have it too. That we are dissatisfied with what God has given us, and we stir up dissension. We're unhappy, and an unhappy person makes everybody else unhappy too. But he who trusts in the Lord will prosper. What's the antidote to covetousness? Let's look at the antidote. What's the antidote to the virus? You could tell me that one, you'd make a good pile of money, wouldn't you?
Right.
Yeah. Look at 1 Timothy 6. We've already read Proverbs 40, or 30, I mean.
But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. People who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge men into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant or to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. In this way they will lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life.
Pick out some words in there that are important.
He talks about contentment and godliness. He talks about not money being bad, but the love of money being a root of all kinds of evil. He talks to us about that he's addressing us when he says rich people. That it's not wrong to be rich. That's a blessing. But don't put your hope in wealth, which is so uncertain. Really made me think of what's happened here the last couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
If you are trusting in your wealth, it could be gone just like that. It's very uncertain.
My financial man hasn't called since all this happened.
You don't want to look at that, do you?
I've got a little bit laid away, and I think it's a little bit less.
But how many treasures that we have from Jesus can be taken away by the coronavirus?
And you know, when he says that they may take hold of the life that is truly life, we should also include teaching our children. How do you teach your children to give, to be generous, to have the right evaluation on earthly goods? How do you do that?
By example of your own offerings and discussing that with your children. And I think this is a time of testing. Even though a lot of us are facing uncertainty, we still want to give our blessing, count our blessings, and return our offerings. We want to help people who are in need. It's a lot of opportunities here to put our faith into practice.
I get a kick out of it when I'm sitting in the bench, and ahead of me is a young family with little kids, and the little girl's got that quarter to put in the offering plate, you know, and of course she's dropped it on the floor. And she's looking for it, and of course the usher's got to wait, but it just warms my heart to see parents trying to teach their kids to give to the Lord. Do you know when the greatest percentage of our income was given to the church?
I think somebody said it was actually during the Depression.
Yes. Yeah, during the Depression, the percentage was up over 3% that was given to the church, because the Lord was teaching people what the true treasures really are. Then he goes on to another sin, the sin of pride or conceit. And pride is nothing but sin and unbelief. Yeah. Look at the second one there, Proverbs 16:5.
The Lord detests all the proud of heart. Be sure of this, they will not go unpunished.
Boy, that's a harsh word. What does he say about the Lord?
He detests the proud of heart.
Yeah, he detests it. And when you detest something, what does that mean? You not only say that's wrong, it's enough to make you shiver, you know, you say, hey, out of here with
Spit it out of your mouth.
Yeah, yeah. And it will not go, pride and conceit will not go unpunished. There's a famous biblical example of that. Remember Pharisee and the publican? What's the publican, or the Pharisee, I mean, doing?
He's boasting, I thank you that I'm not like other men. I'm so great.
Yeah. And look, I even do more than you ask, Lord. I give my tithes more than what you demand from me. And he's making a big show of it. You know, when it comes to talking about riches, I don't think you or I, or too many of us, will ever be classified as rich people in this world, and never make the list of the world's millionaires or Wisconsin's millionaires. But we are rich. We are rich. I remember one time I had to go down south and took Charlene along, and we stopped at Branson, Missouri. She wanted to hear these stage shows,
The music,
you know.
sure.
And you know, they had these timeshare things where you go to have breakfast, and they try to sell you a timeshare, and they give you tickets into one of the shows. And so, good old me, you know, I thought, well, I'll get free tickets. So we went to to this breakfast, and they split us out according to our income. We were in the very last group. You know, they called us in and put us around tables, and each table had a salesman or a saleswoman, and we were in that last group with one other couple. And our salesman was a Cuban. He had come from Cuba, and the supervisor who kept making the rounds kept looking at him because he wasn't getting anywhere with us, you know. And finally he shouted out, "He's a minister. He ain't got no money." No, that I said to him later, "But I've got treasure."
Yeah.
Have you got it?
Yeah.
He wasn't interested. Yeah, we've got treasure. The proud will meet destruction in the end. That we need to remind ourselves. Look at Proverbs 16:18.
Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall.
Yeah, and what's the destruction he's talking about?
I think it's finally eternal destruction.
Yes. And a haughty spirit, a prideful spirit that wants to be God, that wants to take the place of God, is going to end up being cut off from God. Isn't that something? Just think that the worst thing in hell will be to see the backside of God walking away from you. You ever think about that? That hell is described as being completely cut off from God. And there's only one reason why. Not because God didn't want us, not because God didn't pay for us, but because we thought we were better. We didn't need it. And so we end up in hell, not because God isn't love, but because we rejected his love. Yeah. I used to tell the kids, that's the one time when I can use that word, that if we end up in hell, it's our own damn fault. Yes, yeah. Pride and conceit. Our world's good at promoting that, isn't it? Even on the basketball floor with kids. We're number one, right? We're number one. Gotta watch that. That pride comes automatically. The sinful heart is filled with that pride. Proverbs 15:25. Let's take that one.
The Lord tears down the proud man's house, but he keeps the widow's boundaries intact.
So he tears down the proud man's house. Eventually, that doesn't mean just putting some dynamite in and blowing up the guy's mansion. it refers to his family too, right? His whole house, and Scripture's filled with examples about that. But he keeps the widow's boundaries. You know, in those days when Solomon was writing, they had the boundaries of their territory marked with stones, and the Pharisees and the others would move those stones in order to cheat the widows out of their property. Does that 5 mean we're done?
5 to go.
See, my memory is still here.
5 minutes to go.
5 minutes, all right. Why did Solomon have so much to say about pride? What do you think?
I think he might have had some sinful pride for a time, right?
Yeah, I think so. You know, it's interesting that Solomon wrote 3 books of the Bible. He wrote the Song of Solomon as a younger man. He wrote Proverbs, I think, in the middle age and up. And he wrote Ecclesiastes as an older man. And Ecclesiastes, you know, the theme of that is that everything is, you know, worthless, like the breath that comes out of our mouth. And I'd like to think that maybe that book shows us that he finally came back to the right moorings, that he finally realized where he was. Proverbs 13:10.
Pride only breeds quarrels, but wisdom is found in those who take advice.
So what does sinful pride not like to do?
Boy, listen to anybody else's opinion.
Exactly. I trained a lot of vicars. We call them interns too. And out of all of them, I had only one who just couldn't take criticism. Regardless how you try to sugar it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he's no longer in the ministry today because of part of that. You've got to be able to listen, got to be able to evaluate, you've got to be able to respond. And in a marriage, you think that's important?
Oh yeah. Otherwise it's not going to go so well.
That's right. And sometimes in a marriage, instead of having that talking it through, everybody shuts up, and what eventually happens? The blow up comes. The blow up comes. That's right. So don't let sinful pride get in our way when it comes to Proverbs 27:2.
Let another praise you and not your own mouth. Someone else and not your own lips.
Okay. And in German, there's an old expression, Eigenlob stinkt. That means self-praise smells. Let others tell us and congratulate the talents that God has given us. One more passage, Proverbs 25:27.
It is not good to eat too much honey, nor is it honorable to seek one's own honor.
What happens if you eat too much honey?
It can make you sick.
Yeah. What happens if your gallbladder's weak and you eat too much ice cream? Yeah.
You're going to suffer.
What he's saying here is, don't worry about your own honor. Let other people give you the honor. Because if you run after your own honor, you're going to get a bellyache, right? You're going to end up with a bellyache. Let's take the next one yet, and then I think we'll...
Yeah, we can wrap it up then.
Yeah.
Like clouds and wind without rain is a man who boasts of gifts he does not give.
So the clouds, the wind, and no rainfall. And the man who brags about what he's done and doesn't deliver, he's like that. Why does he do that? Trying to make himself look good. What do you call somebody like that? A windbag, right?
There you go. That's probably where that came from, right?
Yeah, I wonder, yeah. So again, as we've been going through these verses, and some of them are so similar, we see very, very clearly that Solomon is trying to direct us to look to our Lord Jesus as our greatest treasure and to be satisfied with the heavenly treasures that we already enjoy and are waiting for us in full, and to not get our hearts set on these earthly treasures that can so quickly be taken away from us, as we're seeing in our present day with that coronavirus and all of the things it's done to our economy. We're rich in Christ. What else do we need?
Exactly. Very good. See you next time.
Okay.